So, hi everyone. Hello to all of you in the room. Hello, hopefully, to lots of people online. The session now comes from our Lab to Live track, and it's the title we have is "Where There's a Process, There's an Opportunity." I work for a company called Minit, a process mining company. I'm delighted to be joined by Rudina Holmqvist, who's a senior business consultant at Telus. Telus are one of the largest telecommunications operators in the Americas. And Rudina will tell us a bit more about Telus and about herself in a moment. But Rudina, hi, how are you this morning?
Hi, James. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Lovely to see you. So we're talking about process mining. It's probably worth just explaining a little bit about what it is. So all companies have processes. Yeah, and you have processes when you buy things. So you have procurement processes. You have processes when you sell things. How do you collect cash? You have processes when you hire people. When you fire people. The whole world in a business is run around a set of processes. And if you look at a lot of those processes, though, they're very big. They tend to have grown fairly organically. You know, they've been built up over years and years. They could have dozens or hundreds or thousands of people touching those processes. Because if you're a big company, if you're a big enterprise company, someone like BMW, I think every week, every month, you're buying millions of components, millions of widgets, and you're turning them into hundreds of thousands of vehicles, and you're selling them. If you think about everything that people do, the tens of thousands of people in the business who are operating that big machine, it's those processes and how those processes work that are interesting. Process mining is the ability to put clever software underneath your big databases, underneath your big software systems. So your enterprise resource planning systems, your ERP systems, your CRM systems, how you deal with customers, and instrument actually what you're doing, to actually look at the data, to look at who is touching what records when, and build up an accurate data-driven model of how your business is performing. The best simile I can give you, it's like if you're driving a car and you want to know how fast you're going, you can look out of the window and say, don't know, 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, or you look at the instruments, you look at the speedometer on the dashboard, and that tells you exactly how fast you're going. So process mining as a tool to find out actually how well your business is operating, and decide then what you want to do to change it. How do you optimize? How do you maybe different forms of labor, robotic process automation, or BPO, or how you do business process management, how you improve your processes. It's a searchlight that is a precursor to all those things. Regina, let's come to you. Listen, thank you very much. It's lovely to, obviously we had a chat the other day, you're a customer of ours. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a bit about you and your background, and then maybe a bit about Telus as well.
Yeah, so I've been with Telus a few years now. Telus is a leading telecommunications provider in Canada. At Telus, we don't just provide some of the traditional telco of the data, voice, TV services, but most recently we've gotten into the healthcare and agriculture space, and it's really with the intent to use technology, the power of technology, to deliver better human outcomes. Mm-hmm. As far as my role at Telus, I'm part of the customer service excellence team, and our primary objective is to provide excellent customer service. Telus is already known for having some of the most satisfied and loyal customers in the industry, but there's always better. A bit about my background, I am an industrial engineer and I have spent a lot of time throughout my career in process and operational excellence. I started in the manufacturing floor in automotive. Interesting you bring the automotive example, where I spent a lot of time on the floor trying to streamline the flow of operations on the shop floor. And that was done in a very visual way, where you can see in a manufacturing floor how the widget, the part, moves through. You can visualize the flow. You can see where there is waste. You see inventory. You see some parts stacked up. That means something is going on upstream that's not really allowing you to flow through. You can see defects really easy in a manufacturing floor, where you can say this parts are out of spec, and we're adding more to that. Let's do something about it. Then I moved into the telecommunications industry, where it's a very, very different workspace, where things you don't see the flow of, in our case, a customer order. It's all digital. It's all behind the scenes. So in our case, we relied a lot on subject matter expertise to tell us how the information is flowing. So I've led complex business problem solving in the Center of Excellence, our Process Improvement Center of Excellence, across the organization. So I've had visibility to a variety of processes spanning our field operations, HR, finance, our information technology teams, and sales even. So a breadth of areas where I've had an opportunity to go in and try to improve our processes.
And how did you first become aware of process mining? Because it's kind of it's a bit of a new category. You know, it hasn't been around for 10, 20 years. When did it first kind of pop up for you?
Yeah, it popped up, interestingly, in 2019 at the Operational Excellence Conference in Canada. There was two presenters that mentioned process mining. The first one talked about, he spoke so highly about the book. He said, if there is one book you should read this year, is the book by the founding father of process mining, Bill van der Elst, Process Mining Data Science in Action. So I took note there. It really piqued my interest. And then there was a second presentation from Minit partner, Kuting. They gave a very compelling presentation about what process mining is, how it can be used, and there again, it really resonated with me. And at break time, I quickly ran to their booth to find out more and even see a demo and ask more questions. So, and when they were explaining it, I just felt that, why are we not doing this already? Data is there. Why are we not making use of data in this manner? Like, why is this a new field? And I guess there has to have been a lot of work done in it to build these solutions out of the box. So,
but you must have been doing other things to improve your process before that. So were there any traditional methods or technologies that you were using before you discovered process mining?
Absolutely. Lots of our two key go-to methodologies that we leverage to drive process improvement and efficiencies are in the Lean and Six Sigma space. So how do you drive waste out of a process to Lean, and how do you reduce variation through Six Sigma? Oftentimes, the first step to where you're trying to understand current state is typically you're relying a lot on, and you're trying to map up your process. You're relying on subject matter expertise. You hold workshops. I've ran many workshops, bring stakeholders together and try to get them to tell the group how their piece of the process works. So oftentimes it's very subjective. It's how someone interprets it, someone does it. And then once you're done the workshops, once you're done that initiative, that process could change very quickly. COVID was a big attestment to that, how dynamic we have to be and how quickly we have to pivot and change. And so you cannot rely on a very outdated process understanding of your process to make changes. So those traditional methods did produce results, just not to the need and the need for more dynamic change that we have nowadays.
I mean, I've been in the process and the automation space for some time. And it's always, if there's one thing that's guaranteed to raise a laugh with an audience of people who work in that whole process space, is when you say, okay, you all work for big companies. How many of you would say that you understand your processes? And everyone kind of mutters a bit. And then you say, well, how many of you really think you've got your processes mapped out really well? And there's just a laugh across the room, because it is, any big company knows that their knowledge and their documented knowledge, their processes, it pretty much it sucks across the board. Because they do change all the time. What prompted you then to actually go ahead and build out a process mining project? Were there any business drivers? What was it that made you kind of actually start doing it?
Yeah, the timing could have not been any more perfect. We were on a mission back in 2019 to better understand the customer journey. As you can imagine, most of us are customers to a telecom. We need internet for our home. So when we place an order in whatever channel you place it, via web, via on the phone, we make a commitment. Telus makes a commitment to the customer saying, we will deliver service to your home at this date and time. And most of the times we really meet that commitment. We really strive to. And there are times when we don't. And this is where we really needed better visibility. And when we go and find out what actually happened, we find that a lot of the time, through a lot of manual effort to deep dive the data that we have, and after we've begged and pleaded through our BI teams to get the data, so that's another challenge, getting the data. And then deep diving that data to better understand what actually happened, very manual process, oftentimes it's upstream. It's somewhere in the process that there was a failure that led to that fallout at the very end that's customer impacting. In addition to that, there is things that I believe we don't even see because it's all hidden in that execution of the process that's done digitally. And to get to that visibility, again, you need to do a lot of manual deep dives, a lot of effort, which oftentimes we do it, we drive improvements, and then we stop there. And then you forget to, not forget, but it's really hard to also measure and control and continuously monitor that. So our journey started with that, trying to understand how are we executing on this customer order to drive better customer outcomes.
And how did you start the whole process of kicking this off? Because, it's quite easy to have an idea and say, right, we think we're going to do this. But the hard bit often for any project is what's the actual thing you do on Monday morning that makes you do it? So what was the kind of process of kicking off that project? How did you start to look for vendors, for partners, in that space? Take us through that kind of nitty gritty a bit.
Absolutely. It's been quite a journey. We've only recently, after a year and a half, I've actually gone through a full implementation of process mining. So as you can imagine, being in a big organization, lots of stakeholders that we needed to consult with to really make a decision and use this technology in our on our data. It started with I started with doing some research and some reading about it after I heard about it in the conference, and then looked at some of the reporting, like Gartner reporting, HFS reporting, and try to understand how third-party vendors are evaluating the space, and then the different vendors. And then we did demos with different vendors out there, and we picked the ones in the leading, the top quadrant, where Minit is one of them, and from there, after some demonstrations, we went and ran some POCs. One of the things that we also realized in the organization is that there wasn't just the team that I'm part of that was interested. There was some other stakeholders that had heard about it through different ways, and they wanted to try it out. So we all did POCs with different vendors to play around with their software, and then the key stakeholders, then we came together and shared our experience on the technology, on the different vendors, and together we made a decision that this is definitely a very high value platform that will drive we believe massive benefits for our organization.
And what were the key factors? You're obviously, you're working with us, which is great. What were the key factors when selecting a vendor? Because again, it's a new and it's very innovative technology, and you did demos. But were there kind of 3 or 4 things that made you go, yeah, those are the key things we need to really think about when we choose?
Lots of due diligence in our process to choose a vendor. I would say the 4 key criteria that we evaluated by was first, function and capabilities. Does it do what we want it to do? There's vendors out there that span the gamut of technology, starting not just with process discovery, but they go into automation. There's vendors that just do process mining really well. So we had to ask ourselves, what are we really looking for here? Are we looking for someone that does it all, or someone that really specializes in this? And because we felt that we were learning ourselves and we didn't understand the space as well ourselves, we believed in it, but we didn't. We just decided to go with a vendor, with Minit, who really does process mining very well, the process discovery and the analytics, which was really the focus of what we're trying to do. We have an automation team, and their responsibilities to choose automation tools like RPA or low-code applications, and that's their domain. So that was one of the important criteria. The second one is, being a telecom, we have key data privacy restrictions. So data residency was a key component for us. We couldn't deploy a cloud model outside of Canada, so we consulted with our privacy and security team and our IT infrastructure team to understand what complies within our regulations and our guidelines. So that's another one that played a role in our decision. So we have an on-prem solution at the moment. It doesn't mean that we are not going to go in the cloud, but for what we needed right now, that's what we evaluated. Thirdly was cost, upfront cost. You can't, we have tight budgets. We need to work with what we have. And so cost was also a factor. Mind you, we went to the different vendors and evaluated apples to apples, what would it cost for the use cases that we were initially trying to deploy on. And then finally, which played quite actually an important role, is really the experience we had on those POCs that we did, as well as the relationship that we built with the vendor during not just the POC, but also when we were talking about working with them long term. So really more around the cultural fit. And that's where, we want to work with people that you get along with, that you feel they provide the flexibility you need, and they'll support you at any time that you need them. So I would say those are the 4 key criteria. Yeah.
And you talked about the proof of concept there that you did. So tell us a bit more about your learnings from that, and what are things that surprised you? Is there anything that you thought, oh, we didn't expect that?
So lots of learnings from the proof of concept. The use case that I'm responsible for is a very complex use case using multiple systems, multiple stakeholders. So one of the lessons I learned from that was maybe I should have picked something simple. Okay. It did take us a lot. We had a lot of learnings about our data, how we don't necessarily have data really well aligned between systems. It was hard to stitch it all together. So a lot of effort, but that wasn't a testament to the hard work that the vendor we worked with, Minit, did to help us move through that POC despite the complexity. Another learning is you really need to get a lot of stakeholders on board up front. It's hard to, this will reveal when you reconstruct that process and show the visualization to leaders, it will be an eye-opener. You and your organization need to be ready for that. These leaders need to be ready for that. So some engagement up front will be really, really helpful when at the end you have some outcomes to show and improvements to drive. So the buy-in up front is really, really important. Yeah, there was some wow moments around, like I mentioned earlier, the inefficiency internally when we execute on that customer commitment. We think we're doing great because at the end that customer has service, but the effort that it takes in between can be really massive. And that's where process mining really with data shows you reality. What it takes, where are all the different paths that order takes? What are all the different, how long does this take? Sometimes we think we have that target next available due date that we provide to the customer, the average that we go by, but there is some customers that deviate significantly from that. So that's something that we were really surprised with and are trying to really shrink down to provide service to our customers much faster. And who wants to wait for internet these days, right?
I was going to say, it's now the internet is seen as, we used to kind of go for electricity, gas, water, but now, broadband is one of those almost a fundamental human right, or at least it's perceived as that. Did you have, so you went on this voyage of discovery. Did you have all the knowledge you needed in-house to implement this? And were there any bits where we needed to help you?
We did not have all the knowledge. That's where we decided to. There was some questioning before we even started on the journey of the POC around, we could do this ourselves. Like, it is coding, you join data from system to system. And after I talked to some people in our BI team, in our IT team, it's the amount of time required and the buy-in to build that view, to build that in-house was really big. And so that's where we need support, is really that out-of-the-box solution that Minit provides. Was we could start seeing the process really quickly instead of us developing the software. That's what I'd say was really supportive. Another one is the best way to get your data. we can get into a little bit of the analysis paralysis where you can say, I need the perfect data. And with Minit's guidance, we followed more of an agile approach. Let's work with what we have. Let's learn from what we have. And then we can continuously clean it up. We can continuously refine those data pipelines to get better information, better inputs to drive our outputs. And the other thing that was that we needed help with is, we go around saying, well, data is everything, but it's not. And with Minit's help is really emphasizing the importance of engaging the business needs to contextualize the insights that the software provides for you. As without that context, it really doesn't mean much. So I would say, yeah.
And you've talked about being customer centric, and that's kind of, music to my ears. I used to work for Amazon where that's the big mantra that kind of gets hammered into you from day one. But did you have any specific targets? We're talking about that time to deliver. Were there any kind of numerical, very, targets where you said, if we get, this is what good looks like, this is the actual outcome we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, so one of the targets we have is to improve the journey for about 12,000 customers that we currently miss committing, delivering service on that committed days. So we find out that there is a challenge, an issue with our infrastructure, let's say, and so we miss that commitment right the first time. And so our goal is to become more proactive, to identify this before it happens, and really manage that customer experience so that we're successful in that first visit. So that's one of our key goals, really understanding what's happening before it has that severe impact, which is missing that customer commitment.
So it could be something that's a long way up the value chain. So, for example, you've got a router you want to send somebody, and the router didn't get from the main warehouse to the secondary warehouse because there was a driver off sick, and. So it's being able to trace back to that level of granularity to find out why those 12,000 people didn't get the service that you wanted to give them.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Or it could be something that when we created that order, there was some missing information. And when we send our installers out in the field, that missing information becomes a friction point where they have to then go and find that out information. They have to call a support group, and then it takes a long time to rectify that. And then we have another commitment to meet. So we may miss this one to be able to meet the other one. So we're really trying to understand what are all the relationships between all of the things that are happening during the journey that affect that final result, which is providing service to that customer on that committed due date.
You work in a business, Rudina. How did you manage the relationship with IT? Because something like this is bang in their ballpark. This is a big, complex piece of software that, horror of horrors, gets plugged in right at a very fundamental level into your core databases, not even through APIs in some cases, but it's looking at that core data, which is the sacrosanct. How did you manage it, and how did that relationship evolve?
Yeah, so IT, a lovely group to work with, I must say. I really enjoy working with them. However, they have their own process and due diligence. And I would say Process Mining could really benefit from Process Mining to really model the flow of their processes, the requests that the business asks them, and how they fulfill those requests. So a great application of Process Mining. I was fortunate in that, and when I was talking about getting champions and buy-ins early on, I was fortunate to reach out to one of the leaders in the IT space who support some of their analytics software, and he really connected with the concept, and I was able to to really showcase what the platform can do for us. And so by building that relationship up front, I was able to overcome some of the barriers and expedite some of the processes that we have to go through to get access to the data. So, and that was and that's a recommendation I have, is really like IT will be your really close friend here when you deploy, as they have the keys to the data and to enable you to get this platform up and running. We had to be patient. Another thing is, like, you have to be patient, and for due diligence, it may not, as a business enabler in our organization, I think of the customer and of our team member experience, but they think of more, making sure our data is compliant, our, the architecture, the way things are structured on house are done per specification. So I had to gain some perspective on why I was waiting. So it was a bit of a patience game as well. Build those relationships and stay patient.
You talk there about maybe instrumenting some of those IT processes, which actually, we're doing a few things around there because it is quite a fertile topic. We've all had that experience of, your laptop goes wrong. In fact, my laptop stopped working on the train on the way here and I had to do a bit of Googling and fix it. But that thing of you raise a ticket and then it takes 3 weeks and you kind of go, why is it taking 3 weeks? Understanding that. But aside from IT, what are some of the other key areas in the business that you think could benefit from process mining? Yeah, maybe within a telco.
Oh, limitless. I think it's just like we've called this session, where there's a process, there is an opportunity. It's in our space, IT. We have our network built. There is Telus is spending billions of dollars laying out fiber throughout in Western Canada. There is lots of processes behind it, lots of stakeholders involved in getting the results that we need, and that's an area that we would love to go and really model how that build cycle flows through and increase some efficiencies there. You could apply this to any process like finance or accounts payable, HR, how you hire people, what is the journey of onboarding. So anywhere there is a process, there is applicability to really use process mining. You need to have the data as well. There is and process mining works with a myriad of data sources, most of your data sources that you have. So as long as there is a digital footprint of those activities, you should be able to use process mining.
And do you have a master plan, a cunning plan to take that success to the rest of the business? How are you going to do it?
Our master plan is to show the value, to show real outcomes, customer outcomes, when during with our implementation. And once we've driven some significant customer outcomes, we believe that this will really scale up. Everyone in the organization will want to use process mining, and really the intent is through a center of excellence in process mining to deploy that throughout the organization. And ideally, we should have all our processes modeled into a process mining platform, so that every time we make a change, we're able to see the impact in real time, and then action it if needed in real time as well. Okay. So it becomes the repository and your ops improvement on an ongoing basis.
And if you're going to do it all again, what would you do differently? What pitfalls would you avoid second time around?
So I mentioned, right, I learned about this in 2019, and it took us a while to get going. We did POCs. If I had to do this again, maybe skip the POC and move right into implementation. It's a proven space and it's new, yet there is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of deployments out there in all industries, and really use that as that proof of concept for yourself and move right into implementation and learn about this. In retrospect, I would have skipped the POC phase and just moved faster.
Got it. So move faster. Is there anything that stopped you moving faster? Were there any pockets of resistance? Was there anything that slowed you down?
Our internal processes did get a bit in our way. Like I was mentioning earlier, when working with our IT team, there's lots of processes that we have to follow to make sure we're compliant. And so that being mindful of that and plan ahead. Lots of you have to have lots of patience in that space.
And looking maybe a little bit wider, looking at the bigger picture, how does this play into like a digital transformation agenda? Is this going to be one of those big drivers that lets Telus continue its journey from being a kind of, because it's a very old company. I think it was founded originally in like the late 19th century, and I've worked in telco a lot. And I don't think I've ever seen, because they tended to be big national carriers, whether they're Telus and I forget where it came from, but it was, like the North Canadian Rockies fixed telephone company or something like that. But whether it's that or whether it's British Telecom or Deutsche France Telecom, they tend to be very old companies. That digital transformation piece, how important do you think that is?
I think it will be very crucial in our digital transformation. It is. A lot of organizations, I keep hearing this, and within TELUS, it is a big strategic objective for us right now to go more and more digital. And process mining will be a huge enabler on not only understanding current state, but really measuring that digitization journey. Processes are foundational to how we achieve outcomes. How do you go from an order to a service delivered at a customer premise? How you do that, even if we do that in a very digitally, touchless, which is one of our objectives, is how do we know how we're doing, that it is actually touchless, that there is no team member or team hidden somewhere really monitoring for fallout or actioning that fallout. If you don't have a way to also measure that journey and the changes, then you don't know that how well you're doing. So critical piece, I believe, to our digitization journey.
Got it. I mean, I used to work for a telco, a business, a B to small B telco, and I remember once literally finding a small room with 3 people in it, and I said, who are you? What do you do? And their job was to send routers out when a router hadn't arrived, and it was quite a typical kind of organic way that, rather than fix the initial bit of the process, which was make sure our logistics and our fulfillment piece really worked properly, was instead someone said, all right, we'll just hire 3 people, stick them in a room, and if someone phones up and says, my router's not here, we just bang one in the post straight away, which is better than ignoring them, but it doesn't kind of fix that core problem, And as time went on, it went from being 1 person to 2 people to 3 people, and all of a sudden you've got a small room of people, and their only job is to fix mistakes that actually, you could avoid. And it's not a great customer experience. Rudina, we're coming to the end now. We've got a few minutes left at the end for questions. But what single piece of advice would you give to anyone considering doing process mining?
Don't overthink it. Just do it. That's what I would start it. Start implementing. Start learning and then deploying it. We can get caught into overthinking, overanalyzing. Is this the right thing? Do I have the right data? You will learn, you will overcome any barriers, and you will really see a lot of value out of this.
Got it. So don't hang around, get on with it. Be pragmatic about the state of the data you have. Don't wait for it to be, don't treat it as a science project, treat it as a real world project. And I think the thing I'd add to that is, make sure you know what the outcomes you want are. Because I think in your case, you had a really clear idea, certainly for the first few processes, of how can we make that customer journey better, and that customer journey specifically around how do we decrease the percentage of people who don't get service on day 0. I think those are great things to keep in mind. There are a million more questions I could ask Rudina, but it'd be lovely if we had questions either from people online. I've got the StreamYard account here, so if you're online, please fire away. But people in the room, 2 people there, gentlemen. Sorry, I fell off motorbike the other day, so I can't lift my left arm up, but I'll try my best. Could we go for the chap here in the white, and then Madam, I'll come to you just afterwards. So let's go with that. Let me just repeat that for people online. So if we could get some idea of return on investment, the ROI, how did you calculate that? What were the things you did to understand, maybe in quite a concrete way, what the return to the business was?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Absolutely. Anywhere, any leader you go to, that's their first question. What's your business case? You want to invest in this technology, and there's tons of technologies out there we can invest in. What's so great about this? And we did have an actual business case. If you talk to people like the founding father of process mining, they said you don't need a business case, you don't need an ROI, you just do this. You cannot afford not to do this. But the reality is that yes, in our businesses we have lots of business problems to solve, lots of money where we can put our efforts in. So yes, we did have a very strong business case, and the way we calculate it is really in terms of customer outcomes. If we can improve our yield, our return for this customers by X%, we set ourselves a goal. then this were the financial benefits that would translate to.
And I can add, actually, having been CRO for a telco, I can look at customers who got great service on day one, and I can look at a different cohort of people where we got it wrong, and I can tell you the difference in churn, and I know exactly what that churn is. So that's return on investment calculation. And you had a second question, and I'm going to go to the lady behind you, but second question. So the question is, how do you? There's a lot of different data sources, a lot of and some data sources may be easy to get to in big statement of record systems, ERP, CRM. But how do you handle the other data sources that may be more offline, or maybe soft structured, emails or whatever, email handles, paper-based delivery checklists, that sort of thing?
So we did not consider any of these soft data sources, like, yes, emails or Excel. We focus more on our bigger infrastructure systems. So I don't really have any experience with accessing those. A lot of our data resides. We've gone through massive efforts of building in-house systems that will house a lot of our data. So we've moved from a lot of legacy systems to some way more modern systems that we've developed.
I'll give you my 5 seconds. At the moment, there's so much low-hanging fruit with nice hard data. That's where you start. If you want to start going after paper-based data, I'd say first of all, go and look at your Oracle, your SAP, or your Infra implementation and do that. Listen, we're nearly out of time, but the lady at the back here, you had a question for us. I'd hate to not hear. So if you've got a very quick question, we can have a very quick answer to. So let me try and play that back. So how does process mining really affect the future of work, particularly in relation to the pandemic and how that whole paradigm is changing? Actually, Rudina, this might be one for me, I think, because I've been in that automation space.
Yeah.
I think what process mining does is it acts as a searchlight. It exposes actually where your business is working, and I think then it gives you the knowledge to decide what you want to do about that. What you want to do about those processes. Do you want to do you want to automate it? Which is a fundamental paradigm shift, moving away from humans doing kind of low value, repetitive, white collar tasks in the same way that we've seen automation, in the farmyard and in the factory. We're now seeing that automation freeing up people to do jobs that only humans can do. Creative jobs that come up with new ideas, new ways of doing things, rather than just kind of grinding the handle on maybe a finance process. So I think process mining opens up the route, maybe to that automation. I think it opens up the route to showing where your processes need to be actually improved, rather than just throwing brute computer force at them. And again, you need people to come up with those process improvements. So I think it's a precursor to both automation and improvement of processes. And in the automation case, it frees people up to go and do actually more interesting things. And in the improvement case, it offers people an opportunity to come up with those new strategies, those new ideas, those new ways of doing things. Does that answer the question? Okay. Rudina, is there anything you can add to that?
No, if anything, COVID really told us, like I was mentioning, like our process is so dynamic. We moved from, as you can imagine, when COVID hit, we could not go into customers' homes any longer. So we had to pivot and do virtual installs, do it yourself installs, but there's no process for that. So how do you pivot? How do you change your processes, and how do you know that they're actually working? So just like you said, really a real need for that real-time dynamic view of all the changes that are happening in your organization.
And I think that's a much better answer. So given that we were inventing new processes with people working remotely on the fly, a lot of the glue and the communications glue that keeps processes working, of people being in an office together, that all went away. And actually having process mining to really shine a light on actually how well those processes are working, actually I think is a great thing. We're out of time. Thank you all very much who are here, both in person and online. Huge thanks to Rudina Holmqvist from Telus. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Really, really good to have you here. My name's James Denning. It's been great being here at CogX. Thank you to the organisers. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the festival.